Occupy Wall Street and student activists have been making a stand against the Purple Monster, a massive expansion plan in Greenwich Village against the wishes of the 99ers. OWS Week covered this and then ran along to watch Milwaukee and LA's protests run amok against police crimes. The Chicago From Tents to Homes meanwhile rallied to let them know, and veterans in Washington, D.C. have been camped outside the VA to fight for rights of veterans. We won't fight the rich man's wars. Occupy Chicago, Occupy Rogers Park, Occupy El Barrio, and Overpass Light Brigade began the week October 15th and lit up a rally, march, and celebration dubbed From Tents to Homes, celebrating eviction resistance.
Here, when we tried to take Congress Plaza the first time, to form a community in which we could build a better world, we were evicted from this space unlawfully. As someone mentioned, a judge found that act unconstitutional. We all know that we did not need the validation of that court in order to know that taking that stand was correct. The First Amendment is our permit, and we owe our political leaders nothing because they do not represent us, and we have chosen to represent ourselves, to be the change that we want to see in this world. And one of the things I want to see change in this world is I want us to stop putting hardworking families out of their homes. Because while we owe nothing to our leaders, we owe everything to our neighbors, to our loved ones, to our families, to the people who are struggling in this economy, because bankers who looted our economy, were rewarded for those actions, while common people got no bailout. Our brothers and sisters are being put out into the streets for no fault of their own. So Occupy Rogers Park and Occupy El Barrio have declared a campaign to address this. We will be putting people back in vacant homes. We will be forming eviction blockades. We will be standing against anyone who seeks to take people out of their homes, who did nothing to crash this economy. We will stand against those who would punish them for crimes they are not responsible for. If you are willing to fight for your home, there are people who are willing to stand with you. Occupy will stand with you.
The event memorialized the repression occupiers faced during the Tent City evictions and celebrated OC's recent court victory overturning charges against them.
We are here to commemorate our one-year anniversary from last year encampment, which is a fail. We have multiple areas, over 250 our occupiers get arrested. We also are celebrating our court victory, which is the court found out actually our First Amendment was broken. So we won our case, all the charges have been dropped, and we are here to celebrate that. We're also here to celebrate, not to celebrate our campaign, which is Occupy Rogers Park and Occupy Barrio, which is taking the lead, taking our homes from the banks.
Last year, occupiers across the country locked arms and resisted the destruction of the communities they had built together. In the coming year, they remain mindful of the eviction and foreclosure crisis displacing their neighbors, and they intend to fight to reclaim homes in damaged communities. O15 marks the beginning of another year of resistance.
I'm somebody who was able to afford to live with the 1%. I've had a wonderful life, a wonderful job, wonderful home, wonderful friends, and I want to see it happen for the next generation. I was lucky, I had all the breaks, and I want those same breaks for the generations to come.
Over on the West Coast, Occupy Los Angeles and Occupy Fights Foreclosures maintained their round-the-clock foreclosure protection this week at the home of Margarita and Benito Lucero in East Los Angeles. The Luceros say Deutsche Bank has fraudulently foreclosed on them, so occupiers and community activists have barricaded Fort Lucero in an effort to stave off eviction and force an amicable arrangement with the bank. In New York City, October 20th dawned on Occupy Wall Street and NYC-based activists, all in the red, as they staged a rally and march against the purple monster.
Why am I out here? I am out here because as a faculty member and a community member, I'm upset about the plan, and I'm upset that there was not a consultation with the community nor with the faculty for such a huge and possibly risky endeavor.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
How long did it take you to organize this?
We gotta win this. We gotta win this.
Like a week and a half, 2 weeks?
Thank you so
Any
much.
other things, events coming up?
Not with regard to this, no. But there's a number of things. If one goes to the FASP website, Faculty Against the Sexton Plan, FASP.com.
Oh my gosh, no, thank you.
Maybe NYUFASP.com. And there's ongoing stuff. We're trying to raise money too because we're in a lawsuit.
NYU's administration plans a massive expansion in Greenwich Village, which will flatten green spaces, including a children's playground and community garden, to build the equivalent of the Empire State Building in the heart of the village.
I understand you're doing this in conjunction with Occupy?
Yeah. I mean, our group got together basically through meeting, through Occupy, and then we started All in the Red, which is a group basically for accessible higher education, and if not free, zero interest loans. So anyways, we got together through that, and now we're going to be spotlighting different universities, different institutions that are being run like corporations.
Protesters amplified opposition of village residents and NYU faculty.
What do you think about the Occupy movement?
I think the Occupy movement is great. What Michael said, like Noam Chomsky says, now they've got to organize, community-based organizing. I mean, from discourse to organizing.
Before they happened last year, did you think it was going to happen? Did you think such a movement was going to take place?
Well, I was certainly hoping that it was going to take place. They articulated a thing that a lot of people were feeling. Its time had come.
Yeah. How do you think it relates to what took place in the 60s?
I think it's part of what took place in the 60s. The issues are more, I think it's more difficult to get we had the war and the civil rights movement, which were levers. Now, of course, the issue is financialization and globalization, which I guess is more abstract in a sense, but no, it's hitting everybody in their pocketbook. So I think people are knowing. I think, once it starts, you can't get it back in the bag. I think the anger is out, but you just have to build on it.
What was your impression of Occupy Detroit?
Well, I still know a lot of people involved in Occupy Detroit, and it's still going on. I think they've done a lot of good things. I think they've broken down into sort of project-by-project efforts. They had initially they occupied, there was a park area in Detroit that they were focused on, and they were favorably treated because it was sort of at the time of the auto bailouts. And so there was a lot of fear in Detroit about what business was doing and what was going to happen with business. But I think, the tactic of just sitting in the park became unsustainable. So they now have moved into, someone has, I don't know whether they've loaned the building, sold the building, given them, but they're a very nice sort of structure that they work out of. And they will promote various projects all around the city from community organizing developments. I work with a group called Center for Community-Based Organizing, which is trying to do economic development in poor neighborhoods and economically underdeveloped neighborhoods in Detroit.
Down the coast to Washington, D.C., where former troops have been occupying the Veterans Administration for a few weeks, camping there 24/7 to fight for rights of veterans of all foreign wars. Those involved have also participated in peace vigils in an effort to stop future war veterans from facing the same discard by the government.
Why did you come to the Veterans Administration in Washington, D.C.?
Because the Durham VA actually stopped listening to our needs, and you get to a point that you hit a dead end on the people that you try to go through the chain of commands, and you get to one point where there's no more. They don't listen to you, they hang up, they no longer care about your needs. And what we're trying to do right now is, I can no longer afford private insurance to pay for private duty nursing, and I can no longer take care of him because I have stress-related seizures, and they don't give us nursing because I am a nurse. I am supposed to take care of him because I am a nurse. I'm not allowed to have help because I am a nurse. But this nurse has been taking care of him for 7 years without asking the Veterans Administration for anything. And when I asked for it, because I can no longer do it by myself, they said, you don't deserve this. You're a nurse. That's your problem. It's your own doing.
Occupiers say vets encounter constant roadblocks to mandated care, and the VA's actions have led to an alarming number of suicides. Who better to take a stand against the endless wars to enrich elites than the men and women who were used and thrown away? A national day of protest was held on Monday, October 22nd, in solidarity with the October 22nd Coalition to Stop Police Brutality, Repression, and the Criminalization of a Generation. The coalition has been mobilizing every year since 1996, bringing together those under the gun and those not under the gun as a powerful nationwide voice. The National Day of Protest brings forward a visible national protest against police brutality and the criminalization of a generation. It aims to expose the state's repressive program and to give voice to those most directly affected by police brutality, reaching out to all parts of society for support and strengthening organized resistance techniques. Occupy Los Angeles joined with Youth Justice Coalition, Los Angeles Community Action Network, Community Education for Social Action, Gender Justice LA, and the People's Education Movement for the 17th Annual Day of Protest to Stop Police Brutality. Protesters gathered in Pershing Square, marched to City Hall for a rally, and wound up the day with a vigil on behalf of victims of police violence and murder. Family members spoke about losing loved ones at the hands of law enforcement and their fight for justice in a system stacked in favor of law enforcement, no matter the circumstance. Milwaukee, Wisconsin's Occupy the Hood marked the day with a citizens' tribunal to end police crimes. The Milwaukee Police Department is under federal investigation for the Derek Williams case and officers' arrests for illegal strip and cavity searches.
My son was murdered by John Bartlett, which was one of the people that was in the Frank Jude beating. His name surfaced in the Frank Jude beating, which had also surfaced in my son's case. We got wind of this during some of the trial, that he belonged to a police gang called the Punishers. He has a tattoo on his body of the Punisher, which is a comic character. They also showed in the federal court that he was, that there was other cops in the area that worked out of the 7th District Police Station that had decals on their car. Today is the annual anniversary of police brutality. It has been going on for the last 17 years, where lives have been stolen, killed, murdered, brutalized, or whichever way you would like to frame it, as police brutality. What we did here tonight, because of the federal government is here to investigate the Derek Williams death, we have taken it upon ourselves to go and to do some investigation ourselves at this time. And today was a very good day of taking the testimonies, and it tied into the anniversary of Police Brutality Day. What we came here to do was to take information, gather it from citizens to tell their story, and also to give their testimonies of police brutality.
Citizens met to focus on MPD's patterns and practices, to call for a broader federal investigation of civil and human rights violations, and to demand the removal of Chief Flynn.
tonight we are at the People's Tribunal to uncover evidence of police brutality committed by the Milwaukee Police Department throughout the years. I guess you could say this was mainly brought to light, after well, whatever you want to call it. Either way, it was a homicide of Derek Williams in the back of a police car. And so today it was basically a chance for community members who have had experiences with the Milwaukee Police Department to share their stories and get this testimony on file. There were lawyers present. It was all legit, and basically all this evidence is going to be sent to the federal investigators who are now looking into what they're looking for, a pattern of police brutality, excessive force, that sort of thing.
The tribunal presented history and analysis of the MPD and documented testimony from victims of brutality and family members of those killed by police. An observer of the actions this week by Occupy and community allies witnessed all races, cultures, ages, and genders involved in a spirited quest for social justice and basic civil and human rights. Protesters continue to occupy the streets and public spaces at great risk to highlight the disconnect between the official image of the United States and the realities faced every day by the people. A perceptive observer may wonder at the lack of numbers, especially in light of hundreds of thousands standing against austerity and brutal regimes in many other nations. Perhaps the ultimate irony of these times is the liberal and progressive contingents of the Democratic Party standing down, remaining mute in causes generally thought to be their signatures: peace, social and economic justice, and human rights. It is difficult to believe that a Democratic president in the White House keeps the liberal masses at home, but it's impossible to deny the proof playing out before our eyes. In economics, austerity refers to a policy of deficit cutting by lowering spending via a reduction in the amount of benefits and public services provided. Austerity policies are often used by governments to try to reduce their deficit spending vis-à-vis increases in taxes so the creditors and banks profit at the expense of the 99ers. In periods of recession and high unemployment, austerity policies are often counterproductive, since reduced government spending always increases unemployment, leaving the underprivileged to the financial wolves. Massive popular protests first erupted in Greece following the 2007 U.S. financial meltdown and its global aftermath, as Europe's economies began to grind to a halt because of what some experts call the greatest heist in history, meaning the fraudulent banking practices that led to the biggest recession since the Great Depression of the 1930s. The EU's weaker economies began to fail at first. Ireland, Greece, Portugal, and Spain, vindictively called the pigs, all experienced massive popular protests against their political status quo as the public realized that their hard-earned pensions were being used to prop up the very banks that had defrauded them. Yet none of the corporate media outlets ever care to mention that these unrests are indeed revolutions of massive social, political, and cultural importance to remove the rulers and their lackeys across the Western Hemisphere. Whereas a small-scale demonstration in a country opposed to the ruling elite's sordid global practices is immediately portrayed as a huge challenge to the government there, millions of disgruntled Westerners taking part in protests in London, Paris, Madrid, and Rome are simply written off as troublemakers by mouthpiece media outlets. The Italian public joined the movement of the people worldwide to denounce their government, once the banking sector-induced poverty began to bite in one of EU's largest economies, and the austerity measures started blighting the lives of millions. With unemployment at record levels, social services reduced to tragic new lows, and literally non-existent public health care, The so-called First World is beginning to taste the same medicine prescribed by the ruling elite for centuries to unsuspecting populations worldwide. Occupy Wall Street movement's rise in the U.S. began to offer hope to hundreds of millions of downtrodden people around the globe. After all, change was seen to be happening at the very top. The people united in the world's leading economy had had enough of watching their country deviate from its intended path. American patriots rose up to denounce the hijacking of their democracy by corporate jackals. The infamous bailouts implemented across the United States took what little the 99ers had saved and publicly handed it to the very con artists whose practices had all but bankrupted the American public. Much has happened since the Patriots rose up to take back their rights, and social networking sites and indie journalists have tirelessly covered to date. But the corporate media in the U.S. has managed so far to hide the austerity measures imposed by Washington on its very own public. Since 2010, there have been 28 municipal and 7 city and locality bankruptcy filings from California to Vermont. A growing number of cities have only managed to avoid bankruptcy via falling into the jaws of the private sector, whose consultants have been granted sweeping powers to modify, reject, terminate, and renegotiate contracts, even union contracts. They can also amend budgets, determine staffing, eliminate departments, and remove members of local pension boards, as well as overrule mayors, city councils, and other elected officials. Talk about a corporate takeover of our lives, and predictably, it is not being televised. United Auto Workers President Bob King says, "This is taking away people's democratic right to vote, elect, and hold accountable their local officials. So if you can do it to a mayor, why can't you do it to a governor? This is a step towards fascism." Believable or not, while the U.S. public have been out in their uprising against Washington's masters, the U.S. corporate have been staging a revolution of their own to do away with government altogether and run America as their private property, a terrifying new turn of events for the 99ers. The exploding sovereign debt levels around the globe are not sustainable by any definition. So the ruling elite are now busy going for the jugular of the very people who have borne the brunt of unpopular policies, unfair taxes, and overseas wars. The reality is that nations like Greece, Spain, Portugal, and Italy may be already on the verge of default. In the UK, the exploding debt has proven one of the key factors that got the Conservatives into office, and it is one of the most closely contested issues by the public and the unions there. But nobody has more debt than the United States. As of June 1st, the U.S. short-term national debt was over $13 trillion. Combined with the medium and the long-term debts, the total stands at a frightening $100 trillion. The U.S. government has accumulated the most colossal mountain of debt the world has ever seen, and it is exploding at such breathtaking rate that massive austerity measures seem inevitable. So are the U.S. 99ers about to witness a complete takeover of their lives and livelihoods, with the ruling corporatocracy edging closer than ever to fascism?